By the time Ben turned back onto his street, two patrol cars were flashing against the mailboxes. Half the neighborhood was pretending not to stare, and Karen was pointing at him like she had finally cornered a criminal. Her SUV sat dead at the curb with the hood open, yoga mat still tossed across the back seat, while an officer stood beside her looking deeply unimpressed. Another officer moved toward Ben's car as his grocery bags slid across the passenger seat. The whole spectacle had erupted over one absurd demand. Karen wanted gasoline from a car that had barely reached the gas station itself. Until Karen moved into Briar Glen Estates, Ben's life was exactly the kind of quiet routine most people hope for and never appreciate until someone ruins it. He owned a modest house, worked predictable hours, kept the lawn trimmed, paid his HOA dues on time, and tried to stay invisible. The homeowners association was annoying in the standard suburban way. It obsessed over mailbox paint, trash can timing, and whether flower beds looked tidy enough from the street. But most of the neighbors were normal, which kept the whole place from feeling unbearable. Karen changed that within days. She arrived like a storm front in designer sunglasses, carrying herself with the confidence of someone who assumed every shared rule existed for other people. She complained about parked cars, package deliveries, kids riding bikes too close to her driveway, and a wind chime 3 houses down that she claimed disrupted her mornings. On the neighborhood app, her name appeared so often it practically became a weather alert. Every inconvenience was framed as a community crisis. Ben had already learned her favorite trick. She never asked for favors, she assigned them. Courtesy, in her mind, was not generosity, it was debt. So when he backed out of his driveway that Tuesday afternoon, low fuel light glowing on his dashboard, and saw her pacing beside her stalled SUV with the hood up, he had a brief instinct to keep driving. Then basic decency got the better of him. That was his mistake. Ben pulled to the curb and offered help the way any reasonable neighbor would. Karen's car had run dry. The gas station was barely 2 blocks away. He told himself this would take 5 minutes at most. He offered her the simplest solution, a ride to the station so she could buy a gas can and get back on the road. Karen did not want a ride. She wanted his gas. Not directions, not a lift, not help solving the problem. She wanted him to somehow transfer gasoline directly from his own vehicle into hers, as if a stranger's fuel tank were a neighborhood amenity she had paid dues to access. Then tried explaining the obvious. His tank was nearly empty. He had no siphon, no can, no equipment, and no safe way to do what she was demanding. The ride was the only realistic option. That was the moment the mood shifted. Her frustration hardened into outrage. She treated his refusal to perform the impossible as a deliberate attack. In less than a minute, a stranded driver became a furious accuser. She took photos of his car, his plates, and even the front of his house. Then came the threat she used whenever reality stopped obeying her. She would report him to the HOA. Ben left anyway. He had errands to run and a gas station to reach. But while the pump clicked beside his car, his phone buzzed with a new HOA portal notice. Karen had already filed a complaint, accusing him of hostile conduct and refusal to assist a resident in distress. It should have been too ridiculous to take seriously. Instead, it kept spreading. By the time Ben grabbed a coffee and headed into the grocery store, 2 more notifications had landed in his inbox. The first was an automated HOA acknowledgement confirming that a resident concern had been opened for review. The second came from a board member asking for his written version before the end of the day because the complaint involved alleged safety issues between neighbors. Safety issues! Karen had taken a simple refusal and inflated it into something darker, something official. Then the neighborhood app started buzzing. An anonymous post appeared about a resident abandoning a woman during an emergency. It did not use Ben's name, but it used enough details that anyone on the street could figure it out. A few people offered sympathy, A few asked nosy questions. One person reminded everyone that running out of gas was not exactly a disaster. That comment disappeared within minutes. Ben stood in the cereal aisle staring at his phone, equal parts irritated and stunned. In less than half an hour, Karen had turned her own incompetence into a public morality play. Then an unknown number lit up his screen. He answered, expecting maybe the HOA. Instead, a tired male voice introduced himself as Officer Miller. The officer asked if Ben owned the sedan parked in front of the address on file in Briar Glen. Ben said yes, and the next sentence made the entire store seem to go quiet around him. Karen had called 911. Not the HOA hotline, not roadside assistance, not a tow company. She had called emergency dispatch and claimed a neighbor had refused to provide life-saving resources during an emergency. The wording was so dramatic it would have been funny if it were not attached to Ben's name. Standing there with a shopping basket in one hand, Ben calmly explained everything. He described seeing her stranded, offering a ride to the gas station, telling her he had no way to siphon fuel, and leaving only after she rejected the only practical help available. He mentioned the HOA threat, the photos, and the sudden complaint. Officer Miller listened without interrupting. When Ben finished, the officer sounded exactly like a man who had spent too many years dealing with people who mistook inconvenience for catastrophe. Units were already on scene, he said, because once 911 received a call framed as an emergency, they had to respond. He asked Ben to return so they could sort it out in person. On the drive back, Ben felt the first real stab of dread. Police involvement changed the texture of everything. Karen had dragged a petty dispute into official territory, and if the HOA got hold of a police incident number, she would milk it for months. When he turned onto his street and saw the flashing lights, his stomach dropped. Karen stood beside her SUV with her arms folded, looking like she expected applause. Officer Miller met Ben at the curb before he even got out of the car. His expression made it clear he had already heard enough. Across the street, curtains twitched. A man walking his dog had stopped walking. Even the HOA board treasurer, who usually avoided conflict like it was contagious, was standing on her porch pretending to water a plant. Karen, meanwhile, was fully committed to the performance. She gestured wildly at Ben's car, at her own empty tank, at the police, at the street, as if sheer motion could turn entitlement into law. She insisted Ben had left her stranded on purpose. She framed his refusal as cruelty. Then she tried to recast it as negligence. When that seemed weak, she drifted toward theft, apparently on the theory that if enough accusations were thrown into the air, one might land. It all collapsed under simple facts. Ben explained, again, that he had offered transportation to the gas station. He had not blocked her car, touched her vehicle, taken anything, or promised anything. He simply refused to give her property he could not safely access in the first place. A neighbor from 2 houses down, who had been outside trimming hedges when it happened, confirmed seeing Ben stop and try to help before Karen started berating him. That was the shift. Officer Miller turned from Ben to Karen and, with visible patience running thin, laid out what the situation actually was. Ben had no legal obligation to donate his fuel. The Homeowners Association could not compel residents to hand over personal property. Running out of gas in front of one's own house was not a police emergency. Calling 911 and dressing it up as one was misuse of emergency services. For the first time since Ben had met her, Karen looked genuinely rattled. The confidence drained first, then the color left her face. She tried to retreat into indignation, but there was nowhere left to go. The officer's partner handed her information for roadside assistance and warned her against calling 911 for anything similar again. No one was arresting Ben. No one was citing him. The only person now at risk of consequences was the woman who had summoned flashing lights over a rejected demand for free gas. With half the street watching, Karen's triumph curdled into instant regret. Ben Carter, 34, light olive skin, average build, short dark brown hair, brown eyes,
light stubble, navy hoodie, blue jeans, stepping from sedan with groceries. Karen Whitmore, 46, fair skin, tall slim, blonde bob, blue eyes, cream zip jacket, black leggings, sunglasses on head, pointing beside stalled white SUV. Officer Daniel Miller, 42, medium brown skin, tall fit, close-cropped black hair, clean-shaven, Navy patrol uniform, near flashing patrol car, tense, low-angle HOA street.